Hello everyone, welcome to our talk today. Before we get started into the wonderful world of accessibility and inclusion, or AI and inclusion even, I'd just like to do a couple of quick introductions. So I am Chris Bush. I am the head of the design group at an organisation called Nexer, and we specialise in building accessible and inclusive products and services. And this is
Simon Lee Valentine, I'm a business analyst on the product management and optimization team.
cool. And today we are going to be talking about how you can leverage AI to build more inclusive products and services. So, without further ado, let's get going. To kick things off, what I thought we'd do is we'd just think a little bit about what it means to be inclusive and how we like to think about accessibility and inclusion within Nexer. So if you zoom out to start the conversation, if you look at the World Health Organization statistics and numbers, they estimate there's about 1.4 billion people in the world with a long-term disability. Now, if you zoom in to the UK, that's about 16 million people. About 1 in 4 people have some form of disability. Now, the interesting thing is if you actually dig into those numbers, they're registered statistics and quite often don't take into account sort of like the hidden numbers behind them. So, for example, there are a lot of people in the world who have access needs that have just acquired them through growing older, or potentially maybe someone might have something like dyslexia but don't identify with having dyslexia, so they might just not like reading. And if you take those people into account, these numbers are probably much, much bigger. And one of the things that we like to think about is actually if you make accessible and inclusive products and services from the outset, you are benefiting many, many more people than you might imagine when you first start looking at these numbers. So, what types of impairments do we tend to think about? So, from the perspective of a product and services agency, we tend to think about these 5 categories in the main. So, visual, someone's ability to perceive or process visual information. Auditory impairments, the things that impact our hearing and how we process noise-related information. Sensory motor, a person's ability to feel and manipulate and interact with devices and quickly, smoothly and accurately. Speech, a person's ability to produce sounds clearly, smoothly and understandably. And one of the ones that tends to get overlooked a bit, particularly when you're looking at digital products and services, is cognitive. And it's probably one of the most important ones to think about in terms of designing things that make things easy for people if they're in mentally demanding situations. So things that could affect reading, memory, attention, or even things like complex problem solving. And then the last category that we tend to think about is mental health. So if you look at the UK government guidance, they recognise mental health as a disability if it has a long-term impact on a person's day-to-day life. So by recognising the challenges that mental health can play in the equation, again, it allows you to open up the possibility of designing better and more engaging products and services. So, we've been exploring the AI and accessibility space for just over a year now. And one of the things that triggered this interest was we started noticing that there were a number of products and services that weren't using AI for improving productivity or improving outputs and things. But we noticed a few services started to look at how you can make services more usable and inclusive, and we're using technology to remove barriers. And it kind of piqued our interest, and it started us thinking about how we could do something similar. So we had a look around and we came up with some approaches. And the two that we saw that caught our attention were mainly around how you can use AI to improve the accessibility of public-facing user experiences. But actually, we've got quite a diverse workforce ourselves within the organisation, and looking at how we could support ourselves to make more inclusive uh, working conditions to support how we all like to collaborate and work together also felt like a big area to explore. So we went out and we looked at lots of different products and services, and we ended up noticing some common behaviours and patterns that were occurring across um, those different needs. So we decided to write a blog post, which you can see the link on the slide here. We'll share it as well after the talk. And we identified what we called essentially some principles, and we came up with about 10 of them. So you can see here some of the ones that we have are the best products and services we reviewed involved real users. They had real user input, and it was clear from how they were implemented that they were driven by real user needs and the context that people were in. They also looked at the challenges that people were facing as they were going through their trying to achieve their goals. And we noticed that the real quality ones were removing barriers. They were taking efforts to make the process as easy and intuitive as possible, whatever that person's needs might be. The good ones all had a level of control that allowed people to control the level of interaction that they had using AI. So if the person didn't want to use it, they could turn it off, or it was clear at least where AI was being used. So if they were worried about their personal data being shared and things like that, they could take steps to avoid and manage how they share those things. Some of the services we looked at where they involved real users were also designed with transparency, so they were being clear about not only how they were using AI, but they were showing how they involved real people in the process to allow people to better understand the choices they made and why they had done them. They also were quite transparent around quality and accuracy, so where AI was being used to generate information, it communicated that with the user in a way that allowed them to make an assessment of, is this something that I might need to check, or is this something that I need to be careful of how I share information and things like that. When it came to ethical and responsible use, the apps that we saw that we liked were quite measured in how they used AI, and they were by communicating those things and involving people and talking about how the data was processed. Again, it aided to the transparency, but also made it feel like it was being done in a considered and in a more considered way. Some of the other things that we saw which were interesting was around how they supported different interaction preferences. So for users who maybe don't use a mouse or have challenges using fingers on devices, they presented that in a different way as well. And then lastly, when it came to compliance and accessibility standards, where they could, they were aligning with known accessibility standards like WCAG. But interestingly, some were going further, and because they were building around user needs, they were also showing how they were aligning to the real user challenges and designing for those. So, for the purpose of today, what we're going to do is we're going to look at a number of these principles, the ones that we thought would be best to help illustrate the examples we've been talking about. So we're going to focus on involving real users, how we focus on user needs in their context, how we can remove the barriers, what we can do to maintain quality and accuracy, and what we can do to support different interaction preferences. So for the first one, focusing on user needs and their context. This is one of my favourite examples when it comes to show the power of how AI can be used to remove barriers. So there is a wonderful, wonderful app called Be My Eyes, which has been around for a few years. And then early last year, I think, they introduced a new feature called Be My AI. Now, the challenge with the Be My Eyes app is when you load it up, in the original version, you could press on a button and it would start a video call with a volunteer, And if a person with a visual impairment, for example, so it's a tool that helps people with visual impairments better interact with the world when they need help. It allows them to get access to help and support really quickly. When you load up the app, you can click on the camera icon and it will start a video call with a volunteer. You can then have a conversation with that volunteer and say, I'm in the kitchen and I want to make a cup of coffee and I can't work out which tin is the coffee. And the person who you phoned will then say, it's the one on the left or it's the one on the right. Now, the thing that we noticed is in some cases, or the thing that we noticed that we liked around this when it comes to AI is that in some cases, you might not actually want to disclose information with a human, or you might want to maintain a level of privacy. So the feature that Beamer AI helps do is you upload an image and it then reads back a description of the image. And if you're happy with it, you can then make the choice that you might need to. Or if you want to, you can then go back into a human interaction as well. So the user's in full control all the time. So what I'll do is I'll give you a quick example of how good the AI element of this is.
Take picture button. Take picture. Analyzing picture. Please wait. The picture shows a group of people standing behind a blue banner with the NHS England logo. The banner reads Accessibility Lab designed for everyone. There are 4 individuals visible. 3 are standing and 1 is seated. The person seated is partially obscured by the banner. The standing individuals are smiling and 1 is waving at the camera. They are in a room with a notice board and other items in the background. The photo is displayed on a computer screen.
So the thing that really blew me away when I saw this is the amount of quality and the depth of information that's coming through from essentially an image. So I took a photo of a photo on my laptop, which amazingly the app has recognized. And it's provided a lot more context than you would expect. So if I asked one of you to describe this image to me, you would probably talk about some of those things, but you might not mention all of them. So that really started to get us thinking. So this photo here is of, we help support NHS England with their accessibility labs. And one of the things that we were doing is sort of testing out different assistive technologies to see how they might perform in different situations. So we took this into the labs to have a play with it and see what it did. And this was some of the feedback or some of the results we got, and we thought that was really good. But also, off the back of that, we then started thinking about, okay, could this be used to look at more complex information? So if it was in a private situation, could I take a photo of my payslip? Would it read out the details of that type of thing? And what we wondered is actually, could this be used to read out from things like graphs? So we took a photo of a simple pie chart to test it out, and this is what came back.
Picture. Please wait. The image shows a clear button. The image shows a pie chart on a computer screen with 4 different colored sections, each representing a quarter of a year with corresponding percentages. First QTR 58%, largest section, dark green. Second QTR 23%, orange. Third QTR 10%, yellow. Fourth QTR 9%, red.
And this was one of the things that we were impressed at. It's not quite right, but the quality of the information and the way it's actually managed to interpret the graph is actually pretty good. It's misread some of the colours, which I suspect is if you look at the image, you can see that in the top right there's a light shining down on the laptop screen, which has probably distorted the colour, sort of like the way the colours are presented and things like that. But the overall number presentation was pretty good. And we started to wonder, actually, could you use this in a different way to allow people to look at their health records, or can you improve the quality of it? So when it's looking at graphs and visualizations and things, could it be done in a way that makes it easier for people to consume information that might be more difficult if they're using traditional technologies. And this was sort of a kind of a light bulb moment, and this is the thing that prompted like the whole discovery piece that we went on. So what I want to do now is just talk about a couple of the other principles. So the empower and inspire one around how you can remove barriers. So there's some amazing technology examples going on around the world at the minute, and some of the ones that have sort of like got us really excited is around how AI is being used to remove the challenges around people accessing complex documentation. So one of my favourite examples of this is Swindon Council. They did this absolutely brilliant proof of concept where they set up a panel called Experts by Experience, and what they were looking to do was to understand if they could improve and make it easier for people with learning difficulties or with cognitive impairments access complex information more easily. And they set themselves the very small and minuscule challenge of, can they make the terms and conditions that people sign up for when they're looking at social housing or when they're moving into social housing, and make them accessible for people with learning difficulties. So what they were looking to do is, can they translate those documents into an easy read format? Now, for those of you that don't know, an easy read format is where you take a paragraph, for example, and you simplify it down into a few bullet points, and you provide some images or contextual information to help people consume that data more easily. So what they started off with was a 50-page document, and they managed to successfully use AI to translate it into a format that was a good starting point for helping people with access needs consume that information. The great thing they did is they co-designed and co-developed this whole process involving this group of people. They're experts by experience. It was 100% informed based on user needs and the challenges that they have, and helping them get to a place where they might not previously have to do. They might have to involve a companion or some other person to help them go through this process. And by doing that and involving them in the process, they've actually managed to increase the efficiency of how they produce these easy read documents. So previously they're quite expensive, about £250 a page, I think it might be. And by using AI, they can speed up the production of those documents and then use the human editors and people who go in and do the quality checks on focusing on making sure that the information is good and to a decent standard. So they can use their budgets more efficiently within the council, which means they can produce more of these documents, which means that they can open up their services for more people. And it just makes it a much nicer experience for people who are moving into social housing. The next item I wanted to talk about is around supporting different types of interaction preferences. So when we were talking about different types of impairments at the start, one of the things we talked about very briefly was around voice and how people communicate using their voice. So Google have been running a project for a few years now called Euphonia, which is a Google research project, and you can go read about it at the link that's displayed on screen, and I'll share it in afterwards as well. And what it allows people to do is it allows people to read structured sentences using their voice to a training agent, and it then uses that voice to help voice recognition systems better understand people when they phone up call centres and things like that, or interact with their Alexas or their Google Homes or whatever it might be. And while that has clear benefits in itself, one of the amazing examples I found, sort of like using a similar technology, is an app called Verboso. Now, Verboso does this really nice thing of taking that engine and using it, or taking an engine like that, and using it to create a game that allows children with who have speech difficulties or speech impairments to be able to practice their speaking and also have fun at the same time. So here on one of the screenshots you can see a little archer standing on the top of a castle and some dragons flying in, and each time the the child pronounces the word correctly or clearly in an understandable way, an arrow's fired and it shoots one of those dragons. So by encouraging repetition and things like that, they've made quite an engaging experience. The other thing they've done, which is the bit that I really like about it, is that information is then pulled out of the game and then sent to the speech therapist to allow the therapist to understand what words the child's having most success with, what words they're having the most difficulty with, and it means that they can change and refine the training program based off of how the child's getting on. So again, using AI to help improve the speech recognition so that the child can practice on their own in a private space, but still having a human involved to make sure that the things are happening correctly and that the person is getting the best experience out of the product and service. The last element I wanted to talk about, which we've sort of covered in a few different ways now, is by maintaining quality and accuracy and by involving real users in the process, you get a very good understanding of what is working, how things might be best adapted or refined to make sure that you're meeting your user needs, and indeed actually taking it a step further and designing it into your whole process so that you're course correcting all the way through. And quite often when we do these things, when we do inclusive usability studies or inclusive research sessions, quite often we'll find things that sit outside of common standards that are clear accessibility challenges. And when we address those needs, when we actually take those products and services back to wider audiences, there's a benefit for them too. So that's the stuff that we've been thinking about, and that's the stuff that's getting us excited about how AI can move barriers. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hand over to Lee, and Lee is going to talk to you about how we've been thinking about inclusive ways of working.
I'll walk you through a few of the initiatives and resources we have built up to make working more inclusive at Nexer. I'd like to share with you some information on employee resource groups, Manual of Me, the Inclusive Language Guide, and how we provide opportunities for frequent sharing of lived and learned experiences. These initiatives are at the heart of our inclusive culture, driving connection, understanding, and success for everyone. Employee resource groups are employee-led, aimed at fostering a diverse, inclusive workplace aligned with some of our organisational objectives. Access at Nexer is a disability discovery focus group. Cultural and religious inclusion at Nexer Group. I'm still proud, which is set up by some of our LGBTQIA community and its allies. I've listed some of our achievements, which we are very proud of and would be happy to talk to anyone about. The Manual of Me is a shared resource giving every employee an opportunity to share their working styles, preferences, and access needs. It serves as a guide for colleagues to understand the adjustments we could make to ensure we collaborate effectively with each other, fostering better communications and teamwork. We believe that openly sharing lived and learned experiences helps to develop empathy and broaden our perspectives, leading to more inclusive workplaces. Our colleagues are given a supportive platform where we can share our experiences and learnings, sort of an extension of the Manual of Me. Some of these sessions have also developed into conference talks on their own. We also welcome external facilitators to deliver workshops on more specialised subject matter. The Inclusive Language Guide is a resource that offers practical guidance to help writers and content creators communicate in a respectful and sensitive way. It offers examples showing what to do and what not to do to prevent alienating or offending any of its target audience. Currently, we're in the process of gathering feedback from internal staff with a view to iterating and hopefully going live with this at some point in the future. So now I'll talk about how we share this knowledge across our teams and bring all of this great work together. Through researching the collection of artifacts mentioned previously, we can develop a diverse set of personas which can be adapted for different technologies and services. For the purposes of this talk, I'm using Microsoft Copilot for 365 as our chosen example technology. This is an example persona. At the top of the slide will include a simple description of the role and conditions faced by this person. Looking at the left-hand side, you can gain an understanding of some of the barriers and difficulties faced when working within the Microsoft 365 in a team environment. To the right-hand side is how Copilot's out-of-the-box features can help overcome some of those barriers and pain points. And I'll just flick through the collection of personas very briefly. We have a visual impairment. Copilot can provide a more accessible enterprise search. It can scan long email chains. It can help with drafting content and intelligent meeting recaps. For cognitive impairments, Copilot helps by consuming detailed technical documents, creating ideas from scratch, and taking time to assess the credibility of various data sources. For sensory motor impairments, Copilot can help by providing voice-enabled prompting, real-time assistance during meetings, building quick and easy presentations so that they can remain focused on producing rich and valuable content. For neurodiverse colleagues, Copilot can support in overcoming sensory overload, helping build more structure in day-to-day planning and help focus and prioritize workloads. And we've done some research on generalized anxiety disorders. Copilot can help overcome fear of miscommunications. They struggle to get started on a task for fear of making mistakes, fatigue for information overload, and anxiety-induced memory loss. Now I'll go through a few demos to show some of Copilot's capabilities. So Copilot can give inspiration and support when faced with the pressures of starting from a blank slate. I would ask Copilot to brainstorm ideas and I would briefly describe what I would like to include. And as you can see, Copilot generates 6 suggestions at a time. So I would generate more ideas until I'm satisfied there's a reasonable starting point for my team. So the results here are quite nice in my opinion. And from here, I would work with my team to add further ideas and this discussion would take place to refine them. From here, I can then categorize the content, which is not just an excellent time-saving feature, but can take away a lot of the cog load from day-to-day activities of a workshop facilitator. This means that they can focus more on valuable role-related activities. At the end of this session, I can then ask Copilot to provide a summary of the notes and things which were discussed. I would then read through it myself to verify that the information is accurate and ready to be sent to the team. In my next example, I want to send an email following up to the workshop attendees. There are some scenarios where people may struggle to quickly convey information using an appropriate tone. I would ask Copilot to help draft an email, giving it simply worded few lines on what I want to include. Here you can see I'd like to thank them for attending the session and let them know the next steps. Copilot can then generate the email and give me the option to adjust the length and the tone, or completely rewrite the email if I don't like it. Once I'm happy with this, I'll copy the loop component from the whiteboard into the email. This is a nice few steps of a workflow which ensures that all the information being shared can be easily accessed by all the participants, so it reduces some of the stress and the cog load of frequent disruption of having to search through files and folders for each piece of information. In this example, I've recently presented a show and learn session on inclusive meetings, and I have a follow-up action to work with the team on how we might implement some of the guidance. Using Copilot within Loop, I can refer to the presentation and generate the first draft plan to implement the guidance. Once this content is generated, I would usually cross-reference this against the content and iterate where required to do so. I can then ask Copilot to restructure this plan into a table so it's easy for my team to digest. Obviously, I would expand upon the content at various points, but this is a great example of how Copilot can help on occasions where people may struggle to strike the right balance between the stress of a heavy workload and processing large amounts of information in a short period of time. From speaking to a group of neurodiverse participants, one of their biggest challenges is to keep on top of their day-to-day schedule. Here you'll see how Copilot can help with this. I'll start my working day by asking Copilot to share what's in my calendar. It will condense the contents of my calendar into a simple list of time-stamped meetings, including the topics and the people attending. I can then select any of the meetings and ask Copilot to help me prepare for it. The results will include details of the agenda, links to sources of relevant information, and the people involved in the meeting. In this example, I have deliberately created an empty meeting invitation, and this is quite common in most people's day-to-day working life and can sometimes trigger stress-related anxiety when you wonder what the meeting is about. Let me show you what happens here. So, in this example, Copilot supports me by pulling out resources from Viva Learning. This is a tool which I wasn't even aware of until recording this demo. Copilot points me towards the articles which it thinks may be relevant to help me explore the subject a bit further. This is very useful in organisations which have a structured library of learning resources, or perhaps a large repository of where regulatory information is kept, allowing more independence for its users to self-serve. Also, if I wish to do so, I can also have a sort of back and forth conversation with Copilot where it can point me towards additional content, which can perhaps assist me with my preparation. Going through some of the steps in this demo can save the user having to spend time and energy context switching and searching for information. It generally allows them to be more organized and independent, so they can focus more of their energy on interesting and valuable role-related activities. On occasions where I'm working with someone new for the first time, I find it very useful to refer to the manual of me to build more of an understanding of my colleague. So here I will point Copilot directly to the manual for a targeted search for information. Once I've got the results I'm looking for, I'm then presented with suggestions for follow-up questions on that person. As you can see here, I'm asking for some examples of visual aids that would help Liam. As you can see here from some of the citations, some of this information is based on a web search. The demonstration shows how Copilot utilizes a range of internal and external sources in a single place. So I'll end this presentation by sharing the main message which is driving this research. At Nexer, we are very passionate about implementing AI capability responsibly so that everybody can access these tools on a level playing field. I feel that tapping into my day-to-day experience as a person with a disability can contribute in some way towards making that happen.
And that's it from us. So thank you very much, everyone, for your time. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're interested in the principles we discussed earlier, you can see the link here. If you've got any questions or you want to learn more about the great work that Lee's been doing, or if you want to ask more about the research we were doing, feel free to contact us at the details that you can see. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Cheers, everyone.